What's poppin', y'all? Today we're going to talk about how the NFL convinced Jay-Z to partner up with them. This is the 13th episode in my series on the 48 Laws of Power, where we connect one story from each chapter to something that happened in real life, either in hip-hop or music in general. The NFL is the one that approached Jay-Z multiple times and have gone through negotiations until they came to a deal. So the main points we will be going over is why they want to work with him and how they got him to work with them. If you like analysis videos on hip-hop and the music business, then subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell right now. If you're enjoying the series, there's a free link to listen to the audiobook on Audible in the description if you're the type of person that doesn't like to read. Law 13 is as follows. When asking for help, appeal to people's self-interest, never to their mercy or gratitude. If you need to turn to an ally for help, do not bother to remind him of your past assistance and good deeds. He will find a way to ignore you. Instead, uncover something in your request or in your alliance with him that will benefit him and emphasize it out of all proportion. He will respond enthusiastically when he sees something to be gained for himself. The story for today happens in 433 BC, before the Peloponnesian War. There was an island called Corcyra, and there was a conflict about to erupt between them and the Greek city-state of Corinth. Both sides sent their own ambassadors to Athens to try and win over the Athenians to support them, because whoever got their support was pretty much guaranteed victory, and whoever won the war was not going to be showing any mercy to the losing side. Talk about a high-pressure situation for these ambassadors, but the one sent by Corcyra was the first to plead their case. The ambassador began by admitting that Corcyra had never helped Athens before, and they had even been allied with previous enemies of Athens. Not too good of a start. There was no friendship, gratitude, or positive history between Athens or Corcyra, but he was now coming to Athens concerned with the safety of his island. The only thing he could offer Athens was an alliance that was mutually beneficial. Corcyra had the second strongest navy at the time, and the only one stronger was Athens. So an alliance between the two would be a force that could not be reckoned with. It would even strike fear in Athens' rival, the Spartans. But that was all the island had to offer. Next up was the ambassador for Corinth, who gave by all measures a strong, passionate speech, entirely the opposite of the stale and straight to the point approach of Corcyra's representative. The ambassador for Corinth spoke about all the things that his city-state had done for Athens in the past, and how ridiculous Athens would look to their other allies if they allied themselves with Corcyra, who was a former enemy, other than a longtime friend who had served them in the past, being Corinth. The man continued saying that those other allies might break their agreements with Athens if they saw they didn't value loyalty, and then referred to Hellenic law that said they needed to repay Corinth for all the good deeds it did for Athens. And then towards the end, he listed all the services Corinth did and how important it was to show gratitude. After both speeches were over, the Athenians got together in a room to debate which they should side with, and the overwhelming majority voted to ally with Corcyra and toss Corinth to the side. You might be asking, why the hell would they do that? That's so ungrateful for all that Corinth did for them. They should want to return the favor and support them now that they're in need. Well, the Athenians were the realists during this time period in Greece. There was no amount of talking, passion, or emotional appeals that could even come close to a solid logical argument, especially one that was in their favor and granted them more power. The Athenians may have been grateful for Corinth, but when the ambassador gave his speech and continuously referenced their past generosity to Athens, it only frustrated the Athenians because he was basically asking them to feel guilty and force them to support him. The Athenians were realists, so they could care less about the past favors and feelings. And while they did consider the possibility that their other allies would consider them ungrateful for ditching Corinth, those city-states wouldn't dare break their ties to Athens because Athens was the most powerful force in Greece. Athens ruled by force, and if any of their allies wanted to try and rebel, they would put them in their place and things would go back to normal. Corcyra just came up and said, here's exactly what we can offer you, and it worked. When people choose to talk about the past and the future, the logical person is going to go for the future and forget the past. Corcyrans knew it was always best to speak pragmatically to that type of person, and in this type of situation, most people are rational thinking. Rarely will someone ever act against their own best interest when given the option. This relates back to how the NFL did a deal with Jay-Z, which many people saw as a surprise. The NFL couldn't possibly just come up to Jay-Z and say they did something for him, because they never did anything for him. Not only that, but he was also supporting Colin Kaepernick, who had caused them a ton of problems in the press and the eyes of a demographic of people that were viewers. While the NFL didn't necessarily get hurt from a profitability standpoint, I had read an article on Forbes this year that said the NFL ratings were way higher this year and only in a trajectory to continue growing. But the NFL knows how important their image is to them, and they knew that the best way to get that demographic of people that Colin Kaepernick had riled up was to get someone who was way more popular and beloved, and that was Jay-Z. Now the NFL knew they had to appeal to Jay-Z's self-interest. After all, he was going to get criticism at first for teaming up with the NFL when he not only supported Colin Kaepernick's kneeling and the other players that followed, but also declined to perform at the Super Bowl and encouraged others to decline. They knew that Jay-Z loves money and he loves power. He wants to be in control, just like with his music career, which I outlined the history of Rockefeller Records in a previous episode of this series that you should definitely check out. The deal with the NFL includes Jay-Z's Roc Nation Sports to work with the league on social justice initiatives and entertainment programming, including the Super Bowl halftime show. There's no exact specific details. Many people were speculating that Jay-Z was becoming part owner of a team, but that was denied publicly by both parties very quickly. Jay-Z had encouraged other music artists such as Rihanna to opt out of the Super Bowl halftime show, but now he's going to be taking money and organizing the show himself, putting social justice forward. But this isn't the first time Jay-Z has done something like this. He did a documentary by the title The Khalif Browder Story and Rest in Power, The Trayvon Martin Story, which he executive produced alongside a name you might be familiar with, Harvey Weinstein, who he would later sue for his unpaid royalties. They removed Weinstein from the credits in his company, but he was heavily involved. So Jay-Z had already produced 2 big documentaries on social issues. The NFL realized he had pull in that area and teamed up with him. But of course, Jay-Z was asked, what about Kaepernick? And to that, he said in a quote, "I think that we forgot that Colin's whole thing was to bring attention to social injustice. So in that case, this is a success. This is the next thing. There's 2 parts of protest. The protest, and then there's a company or individual saying, I hear you. What do we do next? For me, it's about actionable items. What are we going to do about it? We get stuck on Colin not having a job. You know what I'm saying? I'm into action. I'm into real work. I'm not into how it looks from the outside. If protesting on the field is the most effective way, then protest on the field. But if you have a vehicle that can inspire change and speak to the masses at the same time, it's hard to steal the narrative away." Do we know Jay-Z's intentions? Absolutely not. But it hasn't stopped many people from speculating on whether or not he truly cares or if he's just using these issues to set himself up in a position to make a move that ultimately benefits him more than anyone else. This wouldn't be the first time, considering when Tidal was just beginning to be pushed out to the masses, he continuously preached about the importance of ownership and turned his business into some sort of social justice initiative in itself, telling everyone to support a black-owned streaming service, until there were big rumors that Jay-Z was considering selling Tidal to a competing streaming service for a huge lump sum of cash and exit. Although that hasn't happened, it may be that the other streaming services, mainly Apple and Spotify, realized that Tidal wasn't enough of a threat in the current moment to want to buy them out, or Jay-Z doesn't feel like they offered him enough. Dame Dash is another individual who during an interview with No Jumper had words to say about Jay-Z, saying that he's not surprised by this behavior at all. It's normal for Jay-Z, and everyone in the industry knows Jay-Z is like this, and that he's only after a check and his own self-interest. But when asked about the actual deal with the NFL, he made a good point in that he doesn't even know what the exact specifics of the deal are, so how can he possibly speak on or have an opinion on something he doesn't have any information on? There is a reversal to this law, and it reads, some people will see an appeal to their self-interest as ugly and ignoble. They actually prefer to be able to exercise charity, mercy, and justice, which are their ways of feeling superior to you. When you beg them for help, you emphasize their power and position. They are strong enough to need nothing from you except the chance to feel superior. This is the wine that intoxicates them. They are dying to fund your project, trying to introduce you to powerful people, provided, of course, that all this is done in public and for a good cause. Usually, the more public, the better. Not everyone, then, can be approached through cynical self-interest. Some people will be put off by it because they don't want to seem to be motivated by such things. They need opportunities to display their good heart. Do not be shy. Give them that opportunity. It's not as if you are conning them by asking for help. It's really their pleasure to give and to be seen giving. You must distinguish the differences among powerful people and figure out what makes them tick. When they ooze greed, do not appeal to their charity. When they want to look charitable and noble, do not appeal to their greed. This reversal is very hard to attach to a specific artist or event because we can never really know the intentions. For example, sometimes a person may want to do something charitable and would feel insulted if it had to do with money, and the same person in a different time could only want something for their monetary self-interest. But a decent example of this is the underground rap scene. There are a handful of music artists who refuse to ever get signed to a major deal, even though they've been offered tons of money. Think Suicide Boys, for instance, or Sesh Hollow Water Boys. They'd much rather be underground legends and publicly get credit for the fact that they stayed true to the cause. Because at the time they were coming up, being independent was a lot more difficult than it is right now. And to sign, while I don't think their fan base would necessarily care too much, it would go against what they hold true to themselves and the message they want to represent. Because the truth is, Suicide Boys could be a lot bigger if they signed and have probably been offered a ridiculous bag or advance by major labels, but they don't care about the money and never did. They just wanted enough to live and do music, and they've got far more than that now on their own. If you enjoyed this episode, I suggest you check out the rest of the series. It'll be a playlist on the top right, and I'll see you there.